Ladies and gentlemen, I am so blessed to have a miracle happen today. A miracle in the name of the person that is with me today, Miracle Sims. She is an actress, podcaster, author. I mean, what doesn't she do? I don't know. But we're going to find out today. If there's anything she doesn't do, she's going to tell us today. Miracle, welcome to the God and Gig Show. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
It's amazing. Again, I was laughing before we jumped on that. I do know about your podcast, God, Sex, and Love, and I've seen you in different podcast forums. But when I started to go down the rabbit hole, that is your world, your creative world, your faith world. I was like, okay, I'm lost. Like, do I order nail polish, or do I sign up for her? I mean, you have so much going on, and a mom, and like I'm like, okay, like you clearly this is why gigs, right, in my name of the podcast, gigs, plural. You
Yes.
are the epitome of God and gigs, plural, because I don't
Mm.
know what you're not doing. But first, for the people who are meeting you for the first time, just give them a little, give them the 30-second elevator pitch. If they didn't read your bio, can you just give them kind of like a snapshot of who you are and what you do?
Yes. Yes. So I mean, well, if I narrow it down to just a few key like titles, then I would say actress, author, entrepreneur, and then put consultant at the end. But those are the main ones, I guess, right now.
I
I mean,
love it.
yeah, I do have the podcast and talk show, so I guess you could put host on there as well. But yeah, for the longest time, I pursued a career in acting, and so I have a theatrical degree and all this different stuff, and so that was the title for a long time. But I guess the more I just tried to just use all my gifts throughout life, and so that's what kind of added the little extra names and titles and things that I've done. And I like to let people know because I was noticing like when I go visit other places and things like that, that people are reading my bio and it's just so long. I'm like, God, I need to kind of might need to narrow it down a bit and stuff like that. But and I know people are like, oh, you're doing so much, but I mean, to be honest, this is 35 years of work, and that's just the honest truth. It's just things that I've done in my lifetime thus far, and so it's not that I'm doing everything right today at all at the same time, but I am juggling some hats and stuff. But I mean, for the most part, it's like the different titles and different things that I've done has come from the 35 years of my life. So yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. So I don't
There
know which
is.
one.
No, but I was letting you go because I was even thinking as you were talking, and I'm a very ADD person, by the way. This is not Oprah, y'all. This is just going to be Miracle and I talking as fellow creatives who also have their hands. I'm literally coming into this podcast right after trying to plan out my show and concert series musically on Sunday. So I am doing the same thing. I take off one hat, put on the
Mm-hmm.
next hat. Okay, y'all, it's time to podcast. Okay, y'all, it's time to perform. Okay, y'all, it's time to
Exactly.
minister. Like,
Yeah.
you don't really get a line. And that's why I really was like excited once I started realizing, oh my gosh, I'm talking to a fellow, they call it multi hyphenate now, multi passionate, creative, whatever you want to call it. So
Mm-hmm.
I did want to ask you this though, because we do have to, as fellow creators, we do have to kind of walk. You said 35 years, like so that's
Yes.
some experience in this game of creativity and entrepreneurship. So I have to take you back a little bit. Like, what was the first for most of us? Mine was piano. I'll just go first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mine was piano. That was the first pull into the creative world, the space where I was like, okay, whatever I do, I know I'm going to be doing this, and all
Mm-hmm.
the things get added into it, right? So, what
Mm-hmm.
was your first pull to? All right, wait, whatever the age was, I want to do this thing because this makes me feel good as a creative person.
Yeah, well, basically, I knew back when I was in the sixth grade that I wanted to pursue acting and try to pursue it as a career and things like that. So I would say, um, I originally I would just say that was the start. But to be honest, it just was different things that was honing me from a young age. Like, for example, my mom used to write plays, and so I would be the narrator. Wow, I like to tell this part too. While everybody else was saying "Happy Easter," everybody I was saying poems. And so that's the thing. It's like I mean, so I guess that was kind of that as well as like singing was something else that I was constantly doing around that time. She would go visit different churches, and so me and my sister would sing, and so all of those things kind of just stem from that. And then since then, the next thing I started to tap into was probably the writing aspects. Then I started to write poetry, and then eventually those things became songs. And so, that's where Miracle's creative bug and acting bug and all that stuff started at that young age. And then, um, by the time I decided in sixth grade that I wanted to pursue acting, um, I made that my thing. And I don't know if it was because it could be for a lot of reasons, but you know, when you're a child, you have so many different things. You're like, oh, I want to be this, I want to do that, and da, da, da.
Yeah.
And but when it came to that, again, it could be a couple of reasons why I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. One of them, who knows, probably been trying to be defiant because that's probably the only thing that I got a little negative pushback about.
Yeah, I was
Um,
wondering, were your parents or your folks or your family, were they
yeah,
supportive of all this at the time, or did you
yeah,
get?
like well, my mom was because again she was into writing and all that type of stuff. But my stepfather, he kind of just was like, you know, you need to find a real job, like you know,
Mm,
or try to pursue a real thing. And my thing is, it is a real thing, you know. And so, I don't know if that was one of the things that kind of was like, oh, so you said I can, so I'm gonna do. It. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying that's what it was. I'm just telling you that did happen.
yeah.
And it was interesting that that was the only thing. You know, any other idea that I said, it was never like that type of response, if that makes any sense. So,
No, it does. It
you know,
does.
so yeah, it could have came from that as well. Who knows?
But that's a beautiful thing that you know, I think a lot of times we do as children and as young adults and as teenagers, we get those glimpses of what we can be. And like you said, there's all these people say, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that. And I want to also jump into like the faith aspect of this because not only is there that acting and that creative bug, but there's also this bug of, you know, of who I am as a person. Do I believe in God? Does God kind of figure into this thing? So
Mm-hmm.
what was there a faith element? Were you already kind of coming into a relationship with God at that point, or was it something that happened later in life?
So the interesting thing is, so my mother again, she's an evangelist and everything like that. So knowing Bible and Jesus and going to church and all that stuff was instilled in me from a young age, right? But you know, of course, you have to build your own relationship, right? You can't
Right.
just your mom's prayer and everything like that. And so I would say that, ironically, I'm not just trying to plug the book, right? But I did write about it. Basically, there was a time in my life where I had got out of college and I went to go live in Florida, and I was there for about 5 years. And I call that period in my life the cultivation period. I felt like I was really growing in that time. I was really, honing that relationship for myself with God and things like that. Really seeking God about like what He wanted me to do in different areas and all of that. And so I would say, and that was in my 20s. So you could know about Christ all your life, but that doesn't mean you're going to like do everything right and everything like that. And so again, like, yeah, I always knew about what to do, and I was taught, like they say, train a child in the way they should go.
Right.
And then so then when I did have different milestone moments in my life where I had to make some tough decisions, or by the time I got to the cultivation period and things like that, you know um there was something in me that led me to go to the Bible, ask God, and things like that. And that's probably, well, I'm finding, I guess, that that's a unique thing. I mean, I don't know if I realized at the time how unique that was, but looking back on it now and then knowing how other people handle different situations, I don't know if everybody does that or not. So that's how I handle my situations
Yeah,
in
but
tough
I think
moments.
I just had, and it's funny. This is coming up over as you know, as I tell these stories. Basically, it's like my own little therapy because they come up. So you're talking about your cultivation period. I think of mine in my 20s, getting married early, uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, having kids already, having a car and a job and a house by like 25. Is like, what was I doing? I had no clue, right? So you're like learning by doing, and then we have kids that are watching us grow up, me and my wife literally kind of watching us. We're trying to tell them what to do. They're like, you do you know what you're doing? You know, so we laugh because they're,
Yeah.
you know, because we got married young, so now they're in
Mm-hmm.
their 20s and you know, and 30s, and we're, you know what I'm saying? So like we
Yeah.
saw this growth simultaneously in them and in us because we were trying to figure ourselves out. And I think you're right, like each individual person, especially in their faith journey, goes through that kind of up and down, kind of rocky storm moment that, okay, what are you going to do? Is this real?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the people I'm talking to right now, the young people in my family, you know, my son's fiance, he's getting ready to go into this area. And I'm like, okay, do you really know what you're getting into? God's going to talk to you now because this is on you.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think there's so many areas. And then especially creatively, like,
Mm.
were you feeling that cultivating was God speaking to you and helping you to express yourself
Mm.
through the arts, or was it something that was more personal? Like, how were you working yourself through that period that you started feeling God was moving you in a different direction?
Um, well, I mean, yes, art was always therapeutic, like performing and whatnot was something that was therapeutic for me throughout life. But if we focus on the cultivation period in that time, in particular, there was just a lot of things at that time that was on my mind. I was, single, and a Christian, and I've been, I don't know how transparent you want to be here, but I don't
Look, let's just, hey,
know
we're
any
out
other
here.
way to say it other than like I was this single, horny Christian woman, like, and asking God, what do I do? I know what I'm not supposed to do, but what am I supposed to do then? And things like that. And so there was a lot of things at that time that I ended up kind of getting into. Like, for example, I was visiting, well, going to this church, and one of the sermons that stood out to me, that the pastor said, or one of the statements that he said was, when you make God's wants your wants, you're gonna get what you want. See, during
Mm.
that time, again, I was struggling with being single. I wanted marriage, I wanted love, I wanted all that stuff, romance and things like that. And I'm like, Lord, where's my husband? Looking around, every guy was an option until proven not, and it just was. I was struggling. I was struggling with that, and again, I don't know if it just was a combination of all the things, but again, I'm living in this new state by myself. I'm working at a job and stuff like that, but at the same time, not fully like I'm using all my gifts and stuff like that. So I was able to
Yeah.
kind of hone some of that stuff outside of the job. So I was able to kind of do things with that. But yeah, so yeah, during that time in my life, there was a lot of things I was getting into. I was, recording music around that time. I was uh building that relationship with God. I was asking myself the tough questions of like, okay, why am I doing things certain ways? Like, why am I always horny? Why am I, fooling around? Like, what is it that I really want in life, and all these different things? And so, um, yeah, so as I asked those questions and whatnot, I realized that okay, there's things I need to change, there's things I need to do differently. If I want, the things I want, then I need to do some things differently. And I think again that sermon that I just quoted, kind of pushed me in that direction to be like, all right, Lord, well, you had the man tell me, like, obviously
Yeah.
everybody told everybody that day, but you had the man tell
No,
me
you,
that
the
if I
message was for
want,
you. That when you say
yeah,
you want
yeah,
to hit somebody in the shoulder, you can't because like you got point. You said, "Oh, that's for me today."
yeah, yeah. It's like he said that if in order to get what I want, I need to align it with what you want. And so, what is it that you want? Because I thought that it was this. I thought I wanted this X, Y, and Z. But how help me get to that thing? And
Yeah.
that's pretty much what was happening at that time. And I just happened to document it because a friend of mine, we were collaborating on a book idea, and she was married and I was single, and we kind of felt like we were looking at each other's lives, and in that hopeful way, and stuff like that.
Grass is
And
always
because
greener,
there,
kind of thing.
yeah, because she was looking at my life like, oh, you're single, you're living on your own, you're doing your thing down here, blah blah blah. And I'm like, but you're married, you can cuddle with somebody at night and all this different stuff. And so that was kind of inspiration for us to kind of collaborate on an idea. And so I started to write down like my thoughts and things that I was learning along the way as a single woman. And she was supposed to write the married version, but she never did. But anyway, and so that was the beginning stages of this. The funny thing
Yeah.
is, and so yeah, and so like again, I just happened to be documenting the things that I was learning, the advice that I had received along those years, encouragement that I had received along those years, as well as like telling my life story of like how I got to where I was, and things that I wanted to do for my life to look different. And that was the crazy thing because last year is when I finally published the book.
Mm.
And yeah, so it took me from over 10 years to try to figure out like how to get from point A to point
That's
B.
okay
But
because it sometimes, like you said, cultivate. Literally, the book was cultivated, right?
yeah,
Okay, look at that. Look at that full circle thing.
I know.
I wanted to jump in because something you mentioned,
Yes.
and it really kind of sparked my thought process when you
Mm-hmm.
said, where God, you make God's wants your wants, right? And one
Yes.
of my theme scriptures is Psalm 25:10, which is all the paths of the Lord are full of mercy for such that keep his commandments, right? So I've always
Mm-hmm.
felt a weird way about that verse because it says mercy and truth, which is like, oh, mercy, and like everything's going to be good. And then it says keep his commandments. So it's like right after that, it's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you go in all these different paths, and kind of find your way, right? But as long as you come back
Right.
to what I said from the get go, I'll
Yeah.
help you navigate all these things. So as soon as you said it, that's what popped in my head because you seem to have now come more in a comfort level, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
with these different creative spaces, with talking about God, sex, and love, which is your podcast, with the marriage and with the singleness and with everything. There had to be a point where you're like, okay, God, now that things are starting to align, I start to see why you put me in all these different paths.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, when did that crystallize with you in terms of your podcast, God, Sex, Love, where marriage and love and this area that you're talking about, which is a huge one. Like, we never really jumped into this, but we're talking to creatives. You
Mm-hmm.
are not the only one out there struggling. Trust me, especially in this industry. So
Yes.
it's good that you're going there. And I just wonder, like, yeah, when did that message come to you? It's like, okay, not only did you go through it, Miracle, but now you got to talk about it, like, directly.
Yes, yes. So basically, around that time, I was looking for content. I was looking, just looking online, like, let's hear some Christian conversations or whatever the case is. Trying to get that something to stay on the path. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because again, I felt alone. I felt like I was the only one. I felt like, I'm like, Lord, why you got me caring about this and everybody else my age doing what they want to do, and just all this different stuff that I was going through, all this mental things that I was going through at that time, and questions that I would be asking God repeatedly and stuff. And so, in that search, I found that basically there were Christian conversations, but I felt like they only went so far.
Mm.
And so that was one thing. And then the other thing I noticed that, when they would have like panel discussions and people from, you know, different opinions and things like that. And then they say, okay, and this person, they are Christian, they're coming from that perspective. But I noticed they would overtalk that person and cut off that person and wouldn't allow that person to like, I'm like, I want to hear what that person got to say, about this topic. And so I guess that was kind of like the inspiration at that time. I was looking for something and I couldn't find it. And I literally just felt led to be like, well, maybe I just need to get on here. I was getting on YouTube back when you had to, back when you had to like get it on your camera and then take
Yeah,
the thing out and put it.
yeah, the old days, the beginning of YouTube, back whenever it was like that
Yeah,
big red, the logo was different. It's like people would never know. They would never understand. These kids,
right. And it was like so. If people, those videos are still actually on my actress Miracle Sims YouTube. So if you see me with a mini fro like this here, that those videos I'm talking about. So basically, just challenge. I don't know if it was a challenging myself at that time, but it was more so like saying, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna rip the band-aid off, and I'm gonna get on here and tell people what I be thinking about. And so, I one day I just got in front of the camera and was like, all right, I'm a Christian and I think about God, sex, and my career. You know what I mean? And da da da. And I just going off. Then I came back because I was like, let me explain. So when I said sex, it's not just sex I'm thinking about marriage and romance and all that stuff. It's all tied up in one. But I think for me, I just was like, I want to rip the band-aid off about saying the word sex. Because again, this conversation is I think it's so needed, but people still are struggling. Yeah, you know what I mean? They think it's taboo and stuff. And I'm like, for me, looking at like where I am now with the podcast God, Sex, and Love, and just everything I'm doing now, I just see more and more that not only are conversations needed, but like I tell people all the time, I mean, you can look all around us and see what the results of living life and all the things, all my topics, all these different things without God, right? So
yeah,
he needs to be in this conversation. At the end of the day, at least I feel like, if nothing else, I feel like GSL and God, Sex, and Love kind of maybe makes the platform a little bit, more even when it comes to, because you're going to find all kinds of conversations about sex.
oh,
And,
anywhere,
but are you
anywhere,
going to
everywhere
find
you go.
godly conversations about sex? And that's my thing. So, and again, it's not, and no judgment. And that was another thing too, creating a space where, people can be open, honest, transparent, and don't feel like I'm judged. Because, I can have a virgin come on the show and we talk about, that person's perspective. And then we can have somebody that might have been a little bit promiscuous in their childhood and they can still share their testimony and be powerful. So that's the thing. It's like, people have their hangups about, I didn't realize it at the time, like how quote unquote controversial the name was and stuff. But, I'm grateful that God gave it to me. I'm grateful, to be standing in the gap. If that's, I feel like, I guess that's what was meant for me to do, to stand in this gap and say, hey, God, sex, and love, let's talk about it. And let's talk about everything from, and be okay with talking about.
See, I love the fact that you even started with I needed this content because that's my story. The reason
Mm,
why I wrote God and Gigs and wrote a book for Christian musicians who gig was because I could not find a book for Christian musicians who gig. That's the only reason that I even adopted this because I was sitting there in a blues club looking around and said half these guys I saw on Sunday morning, but they're never going to tell anybody, or R&B club or jazz club or whatever. It's like I didn't know y'all did this. They don't
mm,
talk about it, and like you said, the
mm,
conversations. There was plenty of conversation about how to make money. Right? There's
mm,
plenty of conversation about how to get on the big tour, plenty of conversation about how to, but no conversation of like, okay, what do I do when I got to get up for church in the morning? Like there
Mhm.
was nothing on that. How do I get from Saturday night to Sunday morning without feeling like a hypocrite? So
Mhm.
that
Wow.
to me is the exact same thing you just said. How the conversation around sex, around God creating sex, how God created marriage, how God created all these things, and yet
Yes.
you're right. Like even in Christian circles, I'm thinking about all the marriage conferences I'm thinking of. There's always
Mhm.
like a special little section for we're gonna talk about the bedroom, but it's almost
Yeah.
like you can't even mention it until the little special section that so
Right.
we do have our hangups still, and I love the fact that you're talking from experience. You're not trying to be a guru. You know what I
Right.
mean? You're
Yeah.
not coming at this where you're trying to tell something that people don't that you haven't lived and worked out, and then you want to have these
Mhm.
authentic conversations. That's so important that we have to be authentic in who God made us, and then He
Yes.
gives us the words, He gives us the experience, and He uses it. But yeah, I love the fact that you're being authentic about it. I think that's why it's so that's why you're so passionate about it because it's you. It's not like a platform.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, yeah, just trying to create a safe space to have these conversations. And when you go, if you look at the, talk show or if you listen to podcasts, you're gonna see that obviously I don't just talk about God or sex. I mean, well, obviously every time I talk about God, but we're not just talking about sex, right? And I'm not just talking about relationships in every episode.
Yeah.
Like when people I mean, like lately, the talk show has been a lot of like one-on-one conversations with different entrepreneurs and stuff like that, right? If you listen to the podcast, you're more so going to hear like my daily inspiration segment because I literally, for the most part, every day get up and with
Now
the
I saw,
intention to,
yes, I
yeah,
saw that. Like I gotta admire, I gotta jump in here because this is the consistency piece. Okay, we're gonna talk to the
mm-hmm,
creatives
mm-hmm,
who are like complaining, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to. And you are up in the morning. This is a daily podcast, right? Am I right? Not at least Monday through
yeah,
Friday,
yes. Well, it's Monday through Saturday because I was
Monday through
like,
Saturday.
because maybe on Sunday people are getting inspiration from other places. Because I was
Yes, of
like, and then
course.
I can rest.
Right, right.
So that was kind of like some of the thought there is like at least take one day to break because yeah, I do get up at 4 every morning and I try to have it out by 6, and so I mean, and there's a lot of things I think I praise God for change and whatnot because again when you look at my YouTube when I was telling you about the Actress Miracle Sims YouTube, you're going to see that there's a lot of different playlists and different ideas that I had, and you will see that there's a certain amount of videos in those playlists, and so I would get discouraged along the way basically. Because maybe my views weren't that many or whatever, and those things would kind of discourage me along the way. So once I kicked this off, and it started off with doing the daily inspiration segment. Once I kicked that off and everything like that, for me now, I'm just like, you know what? Uh, I just need to stay consistent. I just need to do what I said I'm going to do. I'm going to do, regardless of how many views, how many listens, how many of any of that. Because at the end of the day, you know, I understand it, even if it's just one person that listens to me consistently or whatever, one to one is still a huge movement. I mean, that's what the disciples did, and we still talk
Wow.
about
Okay,
Jesus now.
wait. Okay, pause. That's a mic drop moment. That's a mic drop moment. One to
Yeah.
one is still a
Mhm.
huge movement.
Yeah.
Like it is so hard. Look, I'm going to be again. This turns into therapy, right? We just this like content therapy. I saw someone do this called content therapy. So this is creative therapy, right? When you see that goose egg and the zero or the one view or the two views or the one like or the two likes, it is so easy, like you said, to just say, "Why am I doing this? No downloads to week or two downloads or 10 downloads," and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I want to say the enemy. I'm just going to call them out, right? The enemy messes with us and says, see no harvest. This is pointless. There's a million other podcasters or a million other creatives or a million other actresses or a million other musicians
Yes.
that are all successful. Just hang it up. This is still, and I deal. I mean, I literally dealt with this like yesterday. Like I
Mm-hmm.
got off a call. I have a membership, and nobody attended that specific one. But meanwhile, one of my most active members recently had triple bypass, and she's a trumpet player, and she came on one of my other calls and said, "This is the best money I've ever spent because
Wow.
having this creative outlet." You know what I mean? So it's like I
Mhm.
forgot the one. Jesus
Yeah.
left the 99, go to the one. I forgot that the one person I'm serving in this particular area is literally like just went through a life and death situation and was grateful that this platform was here. So I know
Yes.
you got a one in mind. Like there's somebody, like can you name like somebody, not name somebody their name, but can you just like give an example like where you saw that, where you reached somebody or someone was like touched by something you wrote and it wasn't the crowd, it was just, hey, God gave you like a little confirmation of something like, yeah, this is why you keep creating what you're creating, why God gave you the message.
Yes, actually, there's a lot of different things that has happened like that along the way. Since I kicked the daily inspiration part off in April 1st, 2020, and since then, I mean, there's a lot of little moments where I got little confirmations. But I would say I have to shout out this gentleman because he pretty much comes on like almost every day on my YouTube and comments and say, "Hey, I enjoyed the juice this morning," or something along those lines. And that this is a guy that's in Australia. He goes by the name. Oh goodness, got his name right from my mind. Ewan. Yeah, Ewan in Australia. I don't know this man. I've never met this man. All I know is we've just communicated in regards to because he comments almost every day, and I just was like, that's the only way we kind of was like, okay, hey, hi, what, okay, so is this a male or a female? Like, who is this? Da da da.
Yeah, yeah,
He told me
exactly.
that information. Now, every now and then, I'll shout him out, or you know, or let him know that hey, I saw your comment yesterday, or whatever the case is. And there was the time where there was morning I was tired and I just happened to look at my phone and I saw he had just commented from on my video the day before, and that was something that made me go ahead and get up for that day. So I mean, it's a lot of little things. I mean, he's the most consistent person outside of my mom because she's she's telling me she watches every day too. But outside of my mom, like he's the most consistent person. But I want to say the first time, and I know you like I didn't ask you. I said one time.
No, I know. Give. We need two or three witnesses. Two or three witnesses. So give us two. Give us
Yeah.
two.
Okay. So I'll tell you one more. So I'll tell you the first time that someone responded. Basically, I was doing the daily inspiration segment. I think I probably was like maybe 2 months in or something like that, doing the everyday da da da. And I had someone inbox me on Instagram, and it was a young lady, and she was asking me questions about like basically sex before marriage, and she said she's a virgin, X, Y, and Z, and she was asking for my advice because I guess she was saying like her friends were trying to encourage her to do it. And I was like, hey, well, look, at the end of the day, if you didn't cross that line yet and whatnot, don't do it. Because at the end of just trying to give her a Bible as well as tell her my testimony and stuff like that. And just what I've learned along the way is that at the end of the day, we're not perfect X, Y, and Z, but if you haven't crossed that line, then try your best not to, because there are just consequences beyond, you know, the act and all this stuff and stuff. And so then I happened to ask, I was like, where are you? And she said she's in Mexico. And I'm like, people are listening to me in Mexico. I was just 2 months in. I'm like, what? Because and again, you don't know if anybody listens to you at all. And then all of a sudden, this young lady in Mexico, asked me for advice. And so that was the first time when, with actually, again, the whole movement of GSL that somebody responded and everything like that. That was the first encounter. But like I said, the most consistent is you and outside of my mom. And again, there's just so many other things, like so much fruit and stuff that has come from it. And it may not be, again, it may not be views, it may not be all the likes, it may not be all of that. But I've just seen the growth in so many other areas. Like for example, I got a little team now. I call them my international dream team. And these are like people that are like around the world. I might have found them on Fiverr or wherever, just
Yeah.
online social media networking and whatnot. And they're like people that, none of us are in the same place, but they're like, it's like they're right here with me. I can email, message this person right now to go this person and kind of outsource and give them some of my, my task and daily stuff. And it's just been such a blessing where that's where, I mean, again, the two guys that I was working with in Pakistan, um, long story short, I was able to kind of not only in the beginning I was just collaborating with them on editing the talk show, but eventually we started working on the books and stuff. And and that turned out like when I published my first book is the Bible study journal, the Jews Bible study journal, which is inspired by the the segment. But anyway, not only was it my first publication, but it was their first like publication. And then I actually did interviews with the editor of the talk show now because I have a new editor now, and then the lady who's a quote unquote virtual assistant. I did interviews with them on GSL, and they were speaking so highly of me and how they were so grateful to be working with me at XYZ. And I'm like, y'all don't know how much y'all are listening to me. Like at the end of the day, and then and I had to just think back on again April 1st, 2020. If I didn't step out on faith and be like, let's me do daily inspiration, I wouldn't even be here talking to you right now. Like who knows?
Exactly.
And so that's the thing. The other thing I've learned in this process is that you know, and that's why I encourage a lot of people. Hey, man, walk in your purpose. Do the things that God told you to do. You were just saying that a minute ago, like doing things. Do God's will because at the end of the day, you don't know who. You don't know who is going to bless, and you don't know what you're holding up by not doing God's will. And that was another thing I learned during the cultivation period. I was like, and that put things into perspective for me as well. Again, I was reaching for acting and all this different stuff, and I still act. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I got a business and stuff. I still act. But the thing is, it's like eventually I learned the lesson that basically, you know, the only thing that's going to last is what you do for God.
Yeah.
So my thing is like, well, I want to do something that's going to last. You know, like I want to do something that's going to, that has meaning at the end of the day. And so I've never felt, so much, fulfillment. I've never been as content as I am now in my life. Like, yeah, I'm grateful because God has given me the desires of my heart as well. That's the crazy thing about this book is, again, like by the time I published it, I had to put a little thing at the end to say, hey, all that stuff I was talking about, all that stuff I was praying for, I'm literally living that stuff now. Like I am married.
Wow.
We have I call him annoyingly adorable son, and and to God be the glory that all I did, all I feel like for me that I've done is just made a few choices and decided to be, to trust God in these areas. And I'm in a unique situation right now, because I feel like I'm literally living by faith in all aspects. Because it's not, I'm not working some 9 to 5 now. I used to be a gig person too, in regards to like going to this gig and that gig and da 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 da. All the
Okay.
stuff I'm doing now is my own ideas and endeavors, um, and it's a unique place to be because well, Lord, I got bills still, like but in
Look,
the midst of this, I stay consistent with this, and He's been providing. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm cool with that too. You want me to keep just doing daily inspiration? Okay, cool.
see, look, I
And
gotta
here we
tell you,
are.
that's the what's the immediate picture? Okay, Elijah and the ravens every day, right? Every
Mm,
day, or it go Israel and the manna, whatever way
mm,
you give us this day our daily bread. And see, so
mm,
I am so inspired by you because you just hit on so many topics and things that like absolutely speak to me and will speak to our listeners and our watchers.
mm,
Um, Number one, what you said about how you're now like seeing the fruit of walking through all this stuff and
mm,
dealing with it from an aspect of, well, God, I didn't know why you put this in me. Why did you handle this? Why did I go this direction? And then the VA, there's like so many different directions we could go. The VAs and having the team. Like I just did an episode. I just hired my first VA. She's probably editing this right now. Like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like, and we are so thankful. And how the
yeah.
God has used the internet and
Mm-hmm.
these tools that expand our reach so
Yes.
that we can have a greater message. Because you can't do it by yourself, right? Even Jesus, the
Right.
perfect man, needed 12 disciples.
Right.
So there's so many things we could pick on. But I wanted the one I wanted to jump on is when you just talked about your family, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of creatives, a lot of people like us
Mm-hmm.
are like, okay, wait, you want me to run all the things, do all the things, write the books, do the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and have a family? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
talk a little bit to the people because I'm thinking right now of a couple of young moms in my circle, in my group, that
Mm-hmm.
literally need to hear what you're about to share, which is like, how do you balance day to day so many creative ideas, so many things, but you still got to be mom, you still got to be a wife, you still got to your first ministry. Obviously, I know this is your home. So how do you do it day to day and keep all these things going now that you have everything going on?
Yeah, well, one, thank God for my husband. Again, I feel like, we neither one of us are perfect, but he's perfect for me because he definitely, has been an encouragement. He's been my muse in a lot of ways. Like he's the reason y'all got daily inspiration because I probably was just gonna do it maybe like once a week or, once a month or something. But he just was the one who was like, well, successful people do it every day, and I'm like, huh? What are you talking about every day? Like, and then lo and behold, next thing I know, God gave me the juice, daily inspiration, blah 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 blah, and here we are. So yeah, he's super supportive of me and all my endeavors, like, and so I'm thankful for that. I'm definitely grateful and thankful for that. My son, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, he is 3. In this moment, for example, I am in my quote unquote studio and he's in his room, right? And because I was like, okay, I know I need to kind of put you over there so you can, watch he calls his device his little tablet or whatever. He's like, I need to watch my device. So he's in there watching his device and whatnot while mommy's recording with you. But I mean, yeah, we have to take those moments to, yeah, do the work and do the things that you need to do with your family and whatnot. Obviously he made sure he was fed and everything before I put him away in his room and and all these different things because and then also having to take time for myself as well. That's another thing that I've had to kind of like be intentional about doing now that I'm a mom and things like that. Because again, how can I pour out if I don't have anything in, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's times that I have to lock myself away, and it's funny because um, for example, like maybe my son's running around with toys or something, and my husband might be sitting in the living room, and then all of a sudden I'll just like run in the bedroom and lock the door
It's my chance. It's my chance.
just
It's
to
my
get the
chance.
quiet. It's like, oh, it's time for Papa time. Because
Run
my
away.
son followed me everywhere. That's another thing as well. But yeah, sometimes we got to take that time out for self care and things too. And so yeah, I mean that's how it works. I mean, again, hustling from home, that's another thing as well, that it's helping because again, before the pandemic, basically, I was, I had multiple gigs. I was going here and going there and stuff like that. And then when we did become pregnant and everything, I did wonder, like, man, do I need to change my career? Like, what does this mean? And so again, thank God for my husband and a lady who I deemed to be my mentor. Both of them encouraged me to, hey, keep doing what you're doing. And this is before the podcast, before all the stuff I'm doing right now. Like, keep doing what you're doing because at the end of the day, your child's going to be incorporated in what you do. And I was like, okay. And so I started focusing on just, keep doing what I'm doing, even though I was thinking to myself, I was like, it'd be great to find something to do from home and all these different things. The crazy thing, I don't have to tell y'all what happened in 2020. Y'all already know
Right. Yep.
we all got
Yep.
stuck home, right? Um, but I want to say 2019 was kind of like a transitional time for me because it just was like we had just had our son in 2018, and then and now I'm a mom. All of this is new. I was kind of working from home a little bit because the job that I was at, kind of they knew I was pregnant and they was allowing me to do some different tasks and stuff. But eventually, I could feel the shifts happening, and that's a whole thing by itself. Like when I have them shifts now, I'm like, oh, what you want me to do? But I remember back in the day when shifts be happening, like, well, you still try to fight to stay there or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Look.
anyway,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah.
a
Yeah.
whole
That's
thing
a whole
by
nother
itself.
podcast. You're exactly. That's a whole nother podcast. Look, we could just do an entire series on when
Yeah,
God says move.
right.
Why
It's
don't
like
we move? Because
you
we're
better
like,
go ahead and move because he gonna move you. I
yep.
learned that
Yep.
firsthand. And so, long story short, y'all. So basically, feeling those transition happening, I'm like, well, Lord, what do you want me to do? 2019, I guess I felt led to go ahead and look for a venue for my business because I was like, okay, at the end of the day, I already have this business established, and if having a venue will allow me to be able to do it more because I was doing dinner shows and stuff like that. And so I was like, at the end of the day, if I'm just focused on my business versus working for some other company, X, Y, and Z, then at the end of the day, I can have my son in the dressing room or something, and who's gonna tell me that I can't have my son? It's my business,
There you
and
go.
just and leave it at that. And so I was focused on doing that, and doors open and things happen, and it was a lot of ups and downs that whole year, and I didn't understand it because I'm like, well, you told me to go to get a venue, we got a venue, now it's ups and downs, things ain't working like the way we thought, and all this different stuff is going on. But all of the things that I had established in 2019 started to again, I started to see things flourish in 2020, like because my business was up to date and because I had all those different things, they was helping out businesses with
Yeah.
stimulus and
With the
all this
grants.
different stuff,
Right. Right. Help.
and God
Exactly.
had made a way for me to, not only keep the things that I had accrued over that year, but then also, be able to stay afloat and whatnot. And so, again, and then that's and having those provisions, I guess, at that time, and realizing that okay, once the idea about doing a podcast came back into my heart and mind and whatnot, it just was like, okay, I found out I didn't need as much as I thought I needed to do it. Like I just literally need to take the time to do it. Um, here we are. And again, starting that first task has led to not only the talk show version, like starting the daily inspirations, led to the talk show version, led to me publishing books, led to me helping other people publish books, led to, I'm working on a movie now,
Look at
that
that.
I'm
See.
producing. And there's just so many different things where I'm just like, again, and I have to think about that, man, that first step of faith back then. So I mean, you just never know, like if you if the mothers or people like that, I mean, that may be wondering like, okay, well, how can I do these things again? The other thing for me is realizing that hey, there's 24 hours in a day, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I did have to be intentional about getting up at 4 a.m. because that was the quietest time in my house, and that's the best time to record. Everybody sleep but me, so I could just record, knock that out, boom, daily inspiration done. Then you know everything else just kind of goes after that, and so um, it's been what we're in 2020 now, and I've been doing this ever since 20. I mean 20. No,
Yeah.
we're in
Over 2 years.
2022 now,
Yeah.
and I
Over
was
two
doing this ever
years.
since 2020, and I'm so thankful. Like I just I don't know what to say. I mean,
No,
it's
you
just I met
said it.
so many amazing people and just so
It's,
many.
I gotta tell you, the joy and the fulfillment that is coming from you is really it's amazing because that's exactly why I wanted to go to like the real thing because I think that's why my group is called God Engaged 360 because I wanted people to see the whole picture, not
Mhm,
just a picture of the creative, not just a and people think it's glamorous. It's not glamorous. What you're describing, getting up at 4 in the morning, make sure that, I mean, it's not. I call it. It's glamorous. It's not glorious. I mean, it's not glamorous, but it is glorious,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
I mean, it's glorious to be able to walk in your purpose, to do things that you get to own your job, own your business, own what you're doing, and have your family be a part of it at every step. Like that is, what some people dream of, and you
Yeah.
get to walk in it. Now, is it
Mhm.
tough? Yes, but it's
Yeah.
also like the Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love, right? Like
Mhm.
it's really something that I love. Is just radiating off of you. So I got to ask you this question because I know we got to get come around to a close, but because you've had 35 years, you mentioned it, 35 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And I want to always take you back to that place where you were when you were, I'll just say what you said. You were a single Christian and horny. And
Mhm.
you, and you were dealing with all these struggles, the cultivating period. What would the miracle of today say to the miracle back then? What would you say to her now that you know what you know?
Wow. Um. Well, there's a few things that I wonder, or but I think back on that time. I wonder, like, what seeing where things are now. I wonder, like, where would I be if I'd have kept going then? Like, if I had the consistency that I have now and all that stuff that I'm doing now, being
Mm,
like, hey, no matter how many views, no matter how many whatever, just I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Who knows where I will be in the quote unquote YouTube world now and all these different stuff. So, I do think back on that time, and um, I think I would let her know that it's worth it. It's worth the wait. Like, and these are things that I wrote in here and trying to encourage myself to say, it's going to be worth the wait. It was. It was. I mean, was I perfect? Did I do everything perfect? Even after I learned things along the way, no. But to again look back on, I feel like the reason few reasons I have what I have now. But one, I feel like, yeah, I just made some choices. I made, the decision to say, okay, I'm going to be intentional about, trying to do things God way. I'm
yeah.
going to be intentional about making some changes, X, Y, and Z. And I was faithful at that time in those areas. And I feel like that is ultimately what led me to be where I am now. Now, again, I didn't make every good decision and whatnot, but I will say that, like the Bible say, all things work together for the good of those that love God, right? And so,
Amen.
yeah, I mean, I guess like I'm living proof of that, at the end of the day, and so I would just encourage her to keep going. Um, I would probably have encouraged her to step out on those entrepreneurial endeavors and ideas and whatnot early, or and stay faithful with it because, um, again, I don't know where I would be, and I'm grateful for where I am now. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for that for the timing that everything has happened and stuff. Because again, meeting the people that I've met and publishing when I did and all this different stuff is totally like right now, right on time
Yeah,
type
it's
of thing.
God's timing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's worked out beautifully. But I also still wonder sometimes too, just as a person, maybe it's creative, maybe it's entrepreneur or whatever. But it's just like, these back then I kind of was like, oh well, I want to be in people's stuff. I don't want to da da da. And now I'm just like, I'm so cool with creating my own stuff at this point. I'm so cool. Hey, if the only movies I'm in from here on out is my own, fine. You know what I mean? Like, shows, all this stuff. Like, I mean, I create all those different things, and I want to create more. And so, yeah, I mean, to encourage her, I would say keep going. Um, if I were again to hopefully inspire her and like push her, I would have tried to be like, hey, do more now, because I had way more funds back then, you know what I mean, and
Mm,
things like that. I was getting paid every week at the job that I was at, and that's the crazy thing too. I think because I'm like, Lord, I'm in a place where my funds are very sporadic, yet I'm somehow, able to do all this stuff. But I know it's the grace of God now, but maybe back then I would have been able to do a lot more. I recorded music back then, and so that was kind of like the beginning of me making things, but who knows what I mean, this was written back then. If I had figured out how to publish back then, who
yeah.
knows? I don't know. So yeah, that's what I'd say to her. I mean,
Well, I look. That's the great advice of that is that you're talking to a who would have been your former self, but
mm-hmm,
someone is literally where you were right now. Like
mm-hmm,
someone just heard that, right?
yeah,
So So there's so many young women, young men that are like at that stage, especially now with the TikTok and the YouTube generation, where they do see the tools right in front of them, and they
Mm-hmm.
still have that self doubt. They still have that, well, I don't know, or oh, if I don't go viral, it's not worth it, right? They get that thing. So everything they've heard, and even those who are going farther along and might be getting discouraged, they see where you're at now, and they say, okay, it is worth it. So trust me, even though we go back again, like you just said it, all things work together, right? That 828, all
Mm-hmm.
things, all good and bad things work
Yes.
together for the good of those who are called. And so you're clearly called. Miracle, this has been a blessing. I was looking forward to this conversation. I'm even more happy now that we finally had it. So let's
Yes.
make sure we can help everybody that's listening and watching stay in touch with you. How can they stay in touch with you? What's the best way for them to follow you, social, and all that other stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media as Actress Miracle Sims. The best place to go is probably actressmiraclesims.com because that has a link tree to all my endeavors and things like that. But if you want to, hear the daily inspiration or see the talk show and things like that for God, Sex, and Love, visit godsexandlove.com.
Perfect. I'm telling you, this was, like I said, just a miracle. I love the name, number one. I love playing on the name because it is. It's like what God has done in you clearly has shown his favor and his grace on you. We're praying for more blessings to fall on you and your family and your amazing platform. And hopefully we'll be in more touch future for a future podcast. Let us know because we like talking God, sex, and love over here at God and Gigs too. I mean, the name,
Nice.
number one, just when the name pops up, come on now. God and Gigs, God, sex, and love just fits together
Yeah.
perfectly. So I know we had to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to having you on GSL as well, sir. Come on over to
I'll be
God, Sex,
ready.
and Love and talk to
I,
us.
I warned my wife in advance, like, look, honey, look, I'll be good. I promise.
Oh, but
I just have to say no. She's gonna hear that, but like, Alan, like, yeah, I just have to dig that in. Thank you so much for being on the show, my friend.